Hello everyone, I am Angel Rose Borja and I will continue to discuss the management reporting system. As we already know, the financial reporting system generates reports that is used by the external or outside users. However, organizations needs management reporting system in order to make decisions internally. So what is the management reporting system? The management reporting system is also referred to as discretionary reporting because it is not mandated or not required, unlike the financial reporting. It is also discussed in the previous chapter that in MRS, the organization can choose what information to report and how to present it. One could take issue with the term discretionary. However, we can argue that an effective management reporting system or MRS is mandated by SOX legislation, which requires that the effectiveness of internal control over the financial reporting be monitored and reported on by all publicly traded companies. A management reporting has long been recognized as a critical element of an organization's internal control structure, since MRS that directs the management's attention to problems on a timely basis promotes an effective management and thus supports the organization's business objectives. Now, let us move forward and discuss the factors that influence the MRS. The management reporting system or the MRS was being affected by various factors, since designing an effective MRS requires an understanding of the information that the managers needs to deal with the problems they face. These factors are management principles, management function, level and decision type, the problem structure, types of management reports, responsibility accounting, and behavioral considerations. I and my fellow reporters are going to discuss them one by one. So, starting with the management principles. The management principles offer insight into what is needed for management function, which eventually has an impact on the management reporting system. Because obviously, how they do their decisions should be based on their management principles. There are four principles that most directly influence the MRS, and they are the formalization of task, responsibility and authority, span of control, and management by exception. Let us talk first about the formalization of task. The formalization of task principle suggests that management should structure the firm around the task it performs rather than around individuals with unique skills. So this principle calls for the division of organizational areas into tasks that correspond to full-time job position, and each position's responsibility must be specified in detail. The purpose of this principle is to avoid an organizational structure in which the organization's performance, stability, and continued existence depend on a specific individual. Although a company's employees are the most valuable asset, the resource is not owned by the company because key individuals will eventually leave and take their skills with them. Therefore, by formalizing tasks, the company will be able to more easily find applicants to find or to fill open standard positions left by the departing employees. More importantly, the formalization of tasks promotes internal control. Why? Because with employees' responsibilities being formalized and clearly specified, management can construct an organization that avoids assigning incompatible tasks to an individual. Next, under the management principle is the responsibility and authority. When we say responsibility, it refers to an individual's obligation to achieve the desired result, while authority is the power to make decisions within the limits of the responsibility. Responsibility is closely related to the principle of authority because if a manager delegates or assign responsibility to a subordinate, they must also grant the subordinate the authority to make decisions only within the limits of that responsibility. Now, let us look at this figure. In here, we can see some of the typical job position in a manufacturing firm. In a business organization, manager delegate responsibility and authority downward through the organizational hierarchy from superior to subordinates. You can see on the figure that the president is on the top of the hierarchy, and he or she delegate responsibility and authority down to the manager, and then the manager will also assign responsibility and authority to the people under them. So, in conclusion, the principle of responsibility and authority define the vertical reporting channels of the firm through which information flows. More condensed information is typically needed by the managers at higher level, while while more specific information is provided to managers at the lower levels. Next, still under the management principle, is the span of control. The span of control refers to the number of subordinates that is directly under the control of the manager. The size of the span has an impact on organizational's physical structure. So, and to visualize, let us look at this figure. You can see that on the left side, the narrow span of control, and a firm with a narrow span of control has a fewer subordinates reporting directly to managers. And these firms tend to have a tall, narrow structures with several layers of management. While on the other hand, on the right side, a firm with a broad span of control has more subordinates reporting to each manager and tend to have a wide structures with fewer levels of management. Wider control spans are much preferable according to organizational behavioral research, because they give employees more freedom to make their own decisions and could also result in higher motivation and improved employee morale. Additionally, it is essential to think about the nature of the task when we are determining the span of control. Last but not the least, under the management principle is the management by exception. On the management by exception, this principle suggests that managers should limit their attention to potential problem areas only, that is, exceptions, rather than being involved with every action or decision, so that managers can maintain control without getting tangled down or overwhelmed in details and concentrate more on the area that needs to be addressed. In conclusion, under this principle, reports should support management by exception by focusing on the changes in key factors that are symptomatic of potential problems, and unnecessary details that may draw attention away from important facts should be excluded from the said reports. Okay, now that we have finished discussing the management principles, let us move on to the next factor that influence the MRS, which are the management function, level, and decision type. The planning function, which is mainly concerned with making decisions about the organization's upcoming activities and control, have a significant impact on the management reporting system. And planning can be categorized into two, which are the long range or short range. When we say long range, it usually encompasses a period of between 1 or 5 years, but this still varies among industries. For instance, when building a new power plant at public utility, they might plan 15 years in advance, but when it comes to computer manufacturer, they might only plan ahead for 1 or 2 years. Long-term planning includes several activities such as establishing the firm's goals and objectives, planning its expansion and ideal size, and determining the level of product diversification. When we say short-term planning, it involves the implementation of specific plans that are needed to achieve the objectives of the long-range plan. Example include planning the marketing and promotion for a new product, preparing a production schedule for the month, and providing departments heads with budgetary goals for the next 3 months. Next is the control function. A control function ensures that activities of the firms control the plan. This means that assessing the operational procedure or individual in comparison to a predetermined standard and as necessary taking corrective action. An effective control takes place in the present time frame and is triggered by feedback information that advises the manager about the status of the operation that is being controlled. Planning and control decisions are frequently classified into four categories, which are strategic planning, tactical planning, managerial control, and operational control. Let us look at this figure to understand more about the management level and decision time. As you can see, the top level managers makes strategic decisions, and this strategic decision includes setting the goals and objectives of the firm, determining the scope of business activities, such as desired market share, markets the firm wishes to enter or abandon, the addition of new product lines, and the termination of old ones, and merger and acquisition decisions, determining or modifying the organization structure, and setting the management philosophy. Also, we have the strategic planning decisions characteristics. Strategic planning decisions have long-term time frames because they deal with the future. Managers making strategic decisions require information that supports forecasting. Next is they require highly summarized information. A strategic decision focus on general trends rather than detailed specific activities. Next is strategic planning decisions tend to be non-recurring, meaning strategic decisions are usually one-time events. So as a result, there is little historical information available to support the specific decision. Next is that a strategic planning or the strategic decisions are associated with high degree of uncertainty because the decision maker must rely on insights and intuition. Judgment is often judgment is often central to the success of the decision. Next is that strategic planning decisions are broad in scope and have profound impact on the firm. Once made, strategic decisions permanently affect the organization at all levels. Lastly, is that strategic decisions require external as well as internal sources of information. Next, under the four categories is the tactical planning decisions. Tactical planning decisions are subordinate to strategic decisions and are made by middle management, as you can see on the figure. These decisions are shorter term, more specific, recurring, have more certain outcomes, and have lesser impact on the firm than the strategic decisions that we mentioned earlier. Also, the flexibility of a tactical planning makes it less risky because if something goes wrong or something happens, the business won't be harmed. The next category is the management control decisions. Management control involves motivating managers in all functional areas to use the resources, including the materials, personnel, and financial assets, as productively as possible. The supervising manager compares the performance of his or her subordinates to pre-established standards. If the subordinate does not meet the standard, the supervisor takes corrective action. But when the subordinate meets or exceeds the expectation, then he or she will be rewarded. The last category is the operational control decisions. An operational control decision ensures that the firm operates in accordance with the pre-established criteria. As you can see on the figure, it shows that operations manager exercise operational control, and operational control decisions are narrower and more focused than tactical decisions because they are more concerned with the routine task of operations. Compared to the management control decisions, operational control decisions are more structured, depend more on details than planning decisions, and have a shorter time scope than the tactical or strategic decisions. Moreover, operational control decisions have three basic elements, which are setting standards, evaluating performance, and taking corrective actions. When we say standard, these are the pre-established levels of performance that managers believe that are attainable. It applies to all aspects of organizations or operations, such as sales volume, quality control over production, cost for inventory items, material usage in the production of products, and labor cost in production. Once it is, or once the standard is established, this serves as a basis for assessing the performance. When we say performance evaluation, the decision maker compares the performance of the operation in question against the standard. The variance is the distinction between the two. For instance, a price variance for an inventory item is the difference between the standard or the expected price and the actual price. The variance is said to be unfavorable if the actual price is higher than the standard. The variance is favorable if the actual price is less than the target price. Lastly is taking corrective action. After comparing the performance to the standard, the manager then takes action to remedy any out of control condition. If you still remember in chapter 3, we discussed that we must apply extreme caution when taking corrective action. An inappropriate response to performance measures may have undesirable results. For example, the purchasing agent may seek out of or out low cost vendors of raw materials and disregard the quality to achieve a favorable price variance. If the lower quality raw materials result in excessive quantities being used in production because of the higher than normal waste, the firm will then experience an unfavorable usage variance. The unfavorable usage variance may also completely offset the favorable price variance to create an unfavorable total variance. To comprehend much better, the table you can see on the screen classifies strategic planning, tactical planning, management control, and operational control decision in terms of time frame, scope, level of details, recurrence, and certainty. For the strategic planning, the time frame is long term. For the scope, it is high impact. Level of details is highly summarized. The recurrence is non-recurring, and for certainty, it is uncertain. In terms of tactical planning, the time frame is medium. The scope is medium impact. The level of details is detailed. The recurrence is periodic recurring, and the certainty is highly certain. In terms of management control, the time frame is medium, the scope is lower impact, the level of details is moderately summarized, the recurrence is periodic recurring, the certainty is uncertain. And lastly, for the operational control, the time frame is short, the scope is lowest impact, the level of details is highly detailed, the recurrence is frequent recurring, and the certainty is highly certain. That is all for my part. Now, may I call on Miss Leinette to discuss the next factor that influence the management reporting system.
Good day, this is Lei, and I will be discussing about the problem structure and types of management reports. To begin, problem structure is well organized and follows a specific format with clearly defined fields and relationships. They are often used in traditional data processing techniques because of their fixed format and or predefined schema for effective and sensible processing. Subsequently, The structure of a problem reflects how well the decision maker understands the problem. This structure has three identified elements. The first one is the data, where it describes the values used to represent factors that are relevant to the problem. Second is the procedures, which are the sequence of steps or decision rules used in solving the problem. And third is objectives, which is the results the decision maker desires to attain by solving the problem. When all three elements are shown and known with certainty, the problem is structured. So one example of structured problem is what we call the payroll calculation. How? First, we can identify the data for this calculation with certainty using the hours worked, hourly rate, withholdings, tax rate, and so on. Second, payroll procedures are known with certainty. With certainty, as we have the knowledge to solve and get it whenever it is needed. Just like these two, we will get the gross pay by multiplying the hours worked by the pay rate, and net pay by deducting the taxes and withholding to the gross pay. Again, with certainty because it has solution techniques involving numerical calculations that search for optimal solutions.
Lastly, we have the payroll's objective, which is to discharge the firm's financial obligation to its employees. There we have the result we want, which is to release the payments to its employees. To note, structured problems do not present unique situations to the decision maker, and because the information requisites can be expected in traditional data processing techniques, these are convenient. As I have said, structured problems are well organized and follows a specific format with clearly defined fields and relationships, and typically traditional data processing techniques are designed to work with it. For this reason, the designer who specifies the procedures and codes the programs solves the problem. Of course, if there's structured problems, there's also unstructured problems, the complete opposite, that are named when any of the three elements identified are not known with certainty. In simpler terms, the unstructured problem is where one has no precise solution techniques. How so? Either the data requisites are uncertain, the procedures are not defined or specified, or the objectives of the solution have not been fully established. Such problem is normally complex and engages the decision maker in a unique situation. In this kind of situations, unstructured problems, the data analyst will not be able to fully anticipate the needs of user information. So, the use of traditional data processing techniques, which typically is designed to work with structured data that uses statistical methods and visualizations in order to identify patterns and trends in the data, are deemed ineffective and therefore not totally applicable. To fully understand, let us see the figure 8-17. So this figure shows how the organizational level and problem structure are related. The graphic demonstrates that lower levels of management focus more on solving properly structured problems, while upper management prefers to tackle more complicated problems. Middle level managers frequently deal with challenges that are only partially structured. But remember that these structural classifications only represent broad generalizations. In addition, top managers deals as well with some highly structured problems, and lower level managers problems that lack structure. The utilization of information systems by various management levels is also depicted in figure 8-17. The traditional information system handles completely structured problems the best. The main advantages of these systems are therefore realized by operations management and tactical management. Because management control and strategic planning decisions lack structure, the managers who make these decisions often do not receive adequate support from standard method or traditional systems alone. So, moving on to the types of management reports, we have two broad classifications, the program reports and the ad hoc reports. These two have subcategories. Under program reports are the scheduled and on-demand reports, and while under ad hoc reports, we have the concept of data mining that includes two approaches, which are the verification and discovery models. Management report. First, let us define what is a report. As we all know, the official means of providing managers with information is through reports. Reports frequently connotes a written message presented on sheets of paper. Subsequently, we have understood that a management report or any kind of report may be a paper document or a digital image displayed on a computer terminal. It may deliver information in verbal, numeric, or graphic form, or any combination of these. Relatively, we have general reporting objectives, which has two. The number one objective is to reduce the level of uncertainty linked to a problem facing the decision maker. In essence, decision makers are better be able to make well-informed decisions, effectively manage risk, and produce better results when there is less confusion. It helps improve the quality of decisions and supports companies in navigating opportunities and challenges with greater confidence and clarity. Then the number two objective is to influence the decision maker's behavior in a positive way. To influence in a positive way means that it starts a positive feedback loop that improves cooperation or collaboration, employee engagement, and organizational success. Hence, creates a solid foundation for long-term growth and development, develops the company culture, and motivates productive results. Now, for our first type of management report, we have the programmed reporting. To define, these reports are known to offer information to solve problems that users have anticipated. They are predefined reports that are scheduled, recurring, and automatically generated. Subsequently, it includes fixed format and a predetermined set of guidelines and are produced on a regular basis, like daily, weekly, or monthly. When there is a regular requirement for a certain piece of information to be provided in a defined or standardized manner, program reporting is helpful. So under our program reporting, we have two subclasses, which are scheduled and on-demand reports. Let us first have the scheduled reports. Scheduled reports are automatically prepared and disseminated on a regular basis in accordance with a, of course, schedule. These reports are made to offer stakeholders, decision makers, and other interested parties consistent and timely updates. The Management Reporting System, or MRS, produces scheduled reports based on established time frame. This could be daily, weekly, quarterly, and so on. So, examples of scheduled reports are daily listing of sales, a weekly payroll action report, and annual financial systems. On the other hand, we have the on-demand reports. On-demand reports are described as reports that are triggered by events, not by the passage of time. In simpler terms, these reports are made as needed and given in response to certain questions or requests. On-demand reports, which are produced in real time or almost real time to meet urgent information needs, differ from scheduled reports, which are generated at regular intervals. So, an example of this is an accounts receivable manager responding to a customer problem over the telephone. The manager can, on demand, display the customer's account history on the computer screen. Keep in mind that this query capability is the product of an anticipated need. Then we have the report attributes. We have 7 determined attributes that is essential to consider in making a report. For a report to be effective, it shall have the relevance, summarization, exception orientation, accuracy, completeness, timeliness, and conciseness. So, in relevance, each element of information in a report must support the manager's decision. Relevance values resources and performs functions by keeping a manager's focus to the information content of the report. This ensures that a report provides meaningful, useful, and actionable information because if there are irrelevancies, we may waste resources and may even be dysfunctional to be of help in decision making. So, relevance is vital. Next we have is de-summarization. Reports should be summarized according to the level of the manager within the organizational hierarchy. In general, the degree of summarization becomes greater or in favor as the information flows from lower management upward to top management. Exception orientation. With this, control reports should identify activities that are at risk of going out of control and should ignore activities that are under control. Suppose a purchasing agent who is in a charge of ordering 10,000 different items for an inventory. For instance, in order to find the few items that require reordering out of the 10,000, the agent would have to go through the 10,000 items if they were given a daily report with the exact balances of each item. Hence, an exception-oriented report would identify only those inventory items that have fallen to their reorder levels or points. From this report, the agent could easily prepare purchase orders. So, exception orientation should be considered in a report. Then, we have accuracy. Accuracy suggests that information in reports must be free of material errors. A material error will render the user to make the incorrect decision or fail to make a necessary decision, so we must prevent this as possible as we can. It is a fact that we frequently compromise accuracy for up-to-date information. In many areas of decision-making, communication, and problem-solving, accuracy is one of the utmost significance. Advantages of ensuring accuracy have direct impact on the efficiency and reliability of these processes. In situations that require quick responses, the manager must factor this trade-off into the decision-making process. The fifth attribute is the completeness. Information must be as complete as possible. When referring to data, information, and reports, completeness means making sure that all pertinent information, elements, and details are included. Ideally, we don't want a piece of information that is vital to the decision missing from the report. Like the attribute of accuracy, we sometimes must sacrifice completeness in favor of timely information. In sixth place, we have the timeliness. In many business processes, including decision-making, timeliness is crucial. The value of timeliness rests in its capacity to deliver accurate and necessary data at the critical moment. If managers always had time on their side, they may never make bad decisions. However, managers cannot always wait until they have all the facts before they act. Timely information that is sufficiently complete and accurate is more valuable than perfect information that comes too late to use. Therefore, the management report system must provide managers with timely information. Usually, information can be no older than the period to which it pertains or to which it happened. Last but not the least, we have conciseness. Information in the report should be presented as concisely as possible. The value of conciseness rests in its capacity to effectively explain ideas, ensuring that information are comprehended and transmitted. By doing so, it enhances clarity, saves time, contributes to improved efficiency and decision making. Reports should use coding schemes to represent complex data classifications and provide all the necessary calculations such as extensions and variances for the user. In addition, information should be clearly presented with titles for all values. For the next part, we have the second class of management report, the ad hoc reporting. Ad hoc is a Latin term which translates as this. However, it is also understood as needed or as required. Ad hoc reporting is when reports are generated on request or created on request. It provides quick answers to specific questions. In today's dynamic business environment, managers, especially at higher levels, can't always predict their information needs. When urgent issues arise, traditional methods may not provide timely insights. Database technology now offers direct inquiry and reporting. Therefore, managers, even without extensive computer skills, can swiftly create ad hoc or on-the-fly reports from terminals or PCs, bypassing the need for data processing experts. Increases in computing power, point of transaction scanners, and continuous reductions in data storage, GIL cost, have enabled organizations to accumulate massive quantities of raw data. This data resource is now being tapped to support ad hoc reporting needs through a concept known as data mining. Data mining, for everyone's information, refers to the process of selecting, exploring, and modeling large amounts of data to uncover relationships and global patterns that exist in large databases but are hidden among the vast amount of facts. Furthermore, data mining demands sophisticated methods like database queries and artificial intelligence that simulate actual phenomena using information gathered from a variety of sources, including transaction processing systems, customer history databases, and demographic information. It also has two distinct approaches that managers can employ, which are the verification and discovery models. So what are these two? Let us dive into it. First, we have is verification model. This model uses a drill down technique to either verify or reject a user's hypothesis. Assume, for instance, that a marketing manager needs to choose the ideal target market from among all of the organization's clients for an advertising campaign for a new product. The company's historical data on client sales and demographics will be examined by data mining algorithms to identify comparable sales and the demographic traits that those buyers shared. The promotion campaign can then be targeted towards this segment of the client base. Then, the second one, the discovery model. Discovery model uses data mining to discover previously unknown but important information that is hidden within the data. This model employs inductive learning to infer information from detailed data by searching for recurring patterns, trends, and generalizations. We should keep in our mind that the major difference between this strategy and the verification model is that no particular hypothesis is used to guide the data search in this technique. For instance, a business may use discovery approaches to pinpoint client purchasing trends and develop a deeper comprehension of their motivations and actions. Lastly, for my part, we'll have the data warehouse. It is important for us to acknowledge that data warehouse is a central feature of a successful data mining. To define, a data warehouse is a relational database management system that has been designed specifically to meet the needs of data mining. How so? It is by providing a consolidated, structured, and optimized repository of data that supports the data mining process. Moreover, the warehouse is a central location that contains operational data about current events within the past 24 hours, as well as events that have transpired over the many years. These data we are talking about are coded and stored in the warehouse in detail and at a various degrees of aggregation to facilitate identification of recurring patterns and trends. In our conclusion, data mining can significantly improve management, decision making, but only if the right data has been discovered, gathered, and preserved in the data warehouse.
Good day everyone, I am Jenny Artiaga and I will be discussing the responsibility accounting and behavioral consideration of an organization. Responsibility accounting is a large part of management reporting. This concept implies that every economic event that affects the organization is the responsibility of and can be traced to an individual manager. So, meaning nadidistribute yung responsibility in each of the departments. Now, this particular responsibility incorporates the fundamental principle of responsibility, wherein any managers are accountable for items that they control. So, yung top-level management, nagde-decide sila na they delegate their decision-making scheme sa kanilang manager so that they are able to decide sa kanilang nasasakupan or subordinate. Next is the setting financial goals and the budget process. Now, as part of the duties of responsibility accounting is the setting financial goals in terms of the budgeting process. So, in the budgeting scheme, it helps the management to achieve the financial objectives by setting measurable goals for each organizational segment. Meaning, kapag na-delegate na yung responsibility in each of the departments, they need to set their own budget which is in line with the organization's budget so that they could be able to achieve that objective. This mechanism conveys to the segment manager that standard that senior manager will use for measuring their performance. So, the budget information flows downward and becomes increasingly detailed at each lower level. And the performance of information flow will be upward as a responsibility report. So, ang magiging budget natin dito is pababa. So, yung pinaka-main budget from the top level management, nagkakaroon siya ng pagbaba ng budget while yung performance report naman natin is tumataas. Next is the responsibility center. Sa responsibility accounting, to achieve the accountability, may tinatawag tayong responsibility center. Ito yung business entities frequently organize their operation into units. So, meron tayong tatlong most common forms of responsibility center. Ito yung cost centers, profit centers, and investment centers. First is the cost centers, which are responsible for keeping costs only within the budgetary limit. So, one example of the department considered as a cost center is yung mga department na gumagastos like marketing department, accounting department, and many more. They are considered as cost center because they are revolving in spending their budgetary limits. Another responsibility center is the profit center, which is responsible naman for the cost control and revenue generation. Meaning, nag-i-incur ito ng cost at the same time, ito yung pinagkukunan ng revenue or income ng organization or ng entity. So, an example of this is the manufacturing department or production department. Kasi this department, gumagastos sila ng raw materials, labor, etc. to prepare the product that they are about to sell. And last responsibility center is the investment center, which is generally having the authority of decisions about the cost, revenue, and investment in an asset. An example of this is the portfolio department ng isang organization for the investment in equity or kaya debts. So, next factor that would affect the management reporting system are behavioral consideration. So, one of them is the goal congruence. So, ano nga ba yung congruent? Ang congruent is the scale wherein the goal of each of the departments or responsibility centers should be in line with the goal of the management. In short, the overall goal of the organization. Lower level managers pursuing their own objectives contribute in positive way to the objective of their superiors. So the MRS or Management Reporting System and compensation scheme help to appropriate assign authority and responsibility. By doing this, if compensation measures are not carefully designed, the managers may engage in action not optimal for the organization. Kasi 'di ba, kailangan natin ma-optimize yung goal congruence of management process and resources. So in considering management reporting system, then we should always have that goal congruence. Next behavioral consideration would be the information overload. It occurs when managers receive more information than they can comprehend. Meaning, in this information overload, the manager was being overwhelmed by more information rather than sa typical na na-assimilate ng isang manager. This happened when designer of the reporting system do not properly consider the manager's organizational level and span of control. Information overload causes manager to disregard their formal information and rely on informal cues to help them make decision. Now, by happening this, it can cause manager to disregard formal information in decision making. So, it is important na we do not overload managers with the information. And last behavioral consideration is the performance measures. So there should be appropriate performance measure which should stipulate the behavior consistent with organization objectives. And the manager should consider all relevant aspects, not just one. So, kailan nga ba natin nagagawa yung inappropriate performance measure? Ano yung apekto nito? What will happen is that the report can have the opposite effect in organizational objectives. For example of some inappropriate performance measure is the price variance. Price variance, it can affect the quality of the items purchased. Kasi if magiging mataas ang price variance natin, ang mangyayari ay maghanap tayo ng bago kung saan pasok yung price natin, which is maapektuhan naman yung quality ng product. Next example is quotas. It is also considered as inappropriate performance measure because it can affect the quality control, material usage efficiency, labor relations, and plant maintenance. Last example of inappropriate measures is the profit measure, which can affect the plant investment, employee training, inventory reserve levels, and customer satisfaction. In conclusion, these performance measures are that an organization should put appropriate performance measure in place so that it will be really check and validate the performance of the organization. So that's all for the presentation of Group 1 about Chapter 8, Financial Reporting and Management Reporting System, and thank you for listening.